As always, this podcast is brought to you by Declan Kirby GAA Star. Pre-order the book now from Bookstation and be in with a chance to win a family pass to the Pairc Museum. The new book comes out on April 21st. If you're looking to pick up any presents for any nieces or nephews in the coming weeks and months, then why not check out Declan Kirby GAA Star, best children's GAA book on the market at the minute, as voted by Amazon and Easons. It's available on all good bookshops, Amazon, Easons, absolutely everywhere. So get yourself a copy. The new book comes out on April 21st, Declan Kirby GAA Star, European Dreams. Check it out now in the description down below, and let's start the stream. Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. My name is Aaron. I'm delighted to be joined here by Matthew Hurley of the GAA Statsman podcast. As always, we're going to be running through all the weekend's action, discussing all the big talking points, discussing everything that's happened in the games, as well as every single bit of detail that you probably haven't heard anywhere else. We're also going to be discussing the Hurling final as well, the National Hurling League final, since Matthew here is a proud Cork fan. We're definitely going to run through that game as well. So I suppose, first of all, Matthew, how's things? I mean, the league is over now, so championships next. It's been a quick year.
It has been, definitely. And it was an eventful weekend. Some very good games, all right, between hurling and football, and lower down the leagues as well. That was absolutely brilliant to see. But with sadness as well, Redo Murphy passing away sadly. But at least David Clifford at the end of it shows a sign like he's a brilliant player and is equally a brilliant man as well for paying tribute to him. And he would have played against him in Sigurdsson. It's very sad to see that kind of event happening over the weekend. But some brilliant action over the weekend. Very eventful weekend. Very emotional weekend. But we're all on the championship now, Aaron.
Yeah, 100%. And I definitely echo your own sentiment there as well in regards to Red Oak Murphy. And definitely great to obviously see David Clifford obviously going up there and paying tribute as well. Just looking at the league in general before we start running through the results, and obviously looking back on the National Football League in total, and having seen so many entertaining games, so many competitive games, so many games with really so much on the line. Like, would you look at the National League now as probably the main competition? Because I think a lot of people now are starting to really look at the league and look at it and say, we get so much right with the league, and it'd be great to see if there's some way to combine the league and championship and make it favourable for everyone else. What do you think?
I suppose there's an argument there. We're starting with the Tailteann Cup coming in. Maybe that'll make it more interesting in football. But we've seen the Football League be more interesting than the Hurling League. But then when it comes to the Hurling, the Championship's much more interesting. Like, I actually can't wait for the round robins to begin in hurling. That looks absolutely brilliant at the moment. So, like Munster, for example, you don't know what's going to happen there over the next few weeks. Whereas in football, you know what's going to happen before a ball's thrown in Munster. So maybe we need a revamp for the football championship. But I suppose the Tailteann Cup is a start on that. A lot of sides there. I'd be interested to see that competition. Well, I suppose it'll depend on RT. Well, TG Carr will probably show most of it, to be honest, because RT's coverage isn't really up to scratch at the moment. So it'd be interesting to see that. I'd actually rather see the Tailteann Cup games than the Sam Maguire games, because at least you'll get some very good games in the Tailteann Cup, and a side going to Croke Park when they usually don't in the past few years and going to win a trophy, that could be a very good sight to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and you did see all right as well, like how competitive a lot of the Division 4 and 3 games are. And like, I think as well with Tailteann Cup, like, let's hope those games are shown. Something tells me that they probably won't be until, semi-finals or finals or something like that. Maybe TG Carr might get behind it. Because I'm not too sure if they have rights for the All-Ireland. So maybe that might be something they can get behind, but we'll obviously have to wait and see. Obviously, at the start of the year, you had Proposal B that was coming in, and you had all these different formalities that were coming in. Like, obviously, at the time when I was speaking to yourself, you were of my opinion, really, that, Proposal B's change was going to be needed, because at this stage, like, the championship really needed change, and something needed to come in. Like, obviously, haven't seen the league, haven't seen how it panned out, haven't seen where the sides have finished. Like, for example, I think Dublin, Kildare and Monaghan would have been eliminated completely from the championship. Like, haven't seen that. Like, would you still stand by, like, Proposal B or some sort of maybe, like, slight changes or slight adjustments to it, or what would be your opinion on that?
I do definitely think there should be change, but I don't think Proposal B was the exact answer to that. Like, you'd see, for example, Louth and Limerick being in the championship before Dublin. And yes, Dublin performed poorly. Kildare look at Kildare, for example. Kildare would feel very hard done by if they got knocked out of the championship in favour of Louth or Limerick or even Cavan in Division 4. So I wouldn't have been necessarily for Proposal B, but I think there should be change. Like, I think Peter Creedon, Tipperary Ladies football manager, mentioned this as Laois manager a few years ago. We need a Champions League format for these teams. Like, there's the same number of teams, 32 teams. You get a pot 1, pot 2, pot 3, pot 4, and play it off then. But I suppose the provincial championship, well, as I've said, like, with Munster especially, you know what's going to happen before the ball's thrown in. The other three would be still entertaining. You're holding on to hope that Kildare will put up a show in Leinster, and Leinster quality at the moment isn't that great. So you're really looking towards Connacht and Ulster to set the fireworks off for them type of games. But by a Champions League format, you could have brilliant games throughout the year, really, and anyone could beat anyone. So I'd be for the Champions League format. I don't think Proposal B was the exact answer, but I think they're going about it the right way. They just need to tweak a few things, like the Champions League, for example, because you wouldn't have sides like Louth, Limerick taking the place of Kildare.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I've seen a few different proposals, all right, for the Champions League format. I know Owen Cleary, when he was on my own podcast there about a year ago, give or take, was speaking a little bit about that. And you can have a Division 1, 2, and 3, and 4 team maybe in the one group. Now, there is an argument there that a lot of those groups could end up being very one-sided, and you would see the majority of the Division 1 teams progressing. But it definitely would be something they can get behind. Sharon Hegarty says there, how are you? Hope all is well, Sharon. And cheers anyone who's tuning in. If you could smash the like button, that would be much appreciated as well. Dylan Duffy says here, could have a World Cup format for the football, 8 groups, 32 teams. London and New York could fight for a spot since Kilkenny don't play football. Yeah, I think that's exactly the point we're going for there. Like, what would you be more in favour of, Matthew? Like, would it be more kind of like a Division 1, 2, 3, and 4 team open draw, or what do you reckon?
I think Division 1, 2, 3, and 4 team, personally. Or maybe like UEFA do something. Well, I suppose learning from UEFA, that isn't the smartest move for the GAA, considering how corrupt they are at the moment. But I think you might do a coefficient system, depending on sides have done well over the last few years. For example, like Armagh, while they did well this year, will be still down low the coefficient. They might be even put into pot 2 or 3, a bit like an AC Milan, who haven't been in Europe for years or so, and they're down the pots. They might get a tough draw after that. So maybe that kind of system, in my opinion, could make the championship more interesting. I would have been in favour of like Division 1, 2, 3 in favour of pots, for example. But think about it more. I think a coefficient system might be good. Maybe it's not the best system in the world, but at the same time, you would get tough groups, you get exciting games. And I think I'd say go for it. It's not, as I said, it's not the best policy to be copying off UEFA or FIFA, but sometimes it can be beneficial for a championship like this in need of brilliant games.
Yeah, and they could even do something as well with the league as well, maybe where they maybe go with the league format, I suppose, and that would definitely make more of an impact as well, with teams sort of fighting from Division 2. They could obviously fight for a seeded place, and for example, you'd have Roscommon and Galway who'd be coming up this year with a seeded place away from all the other Division 1 teams, so it would definitely make a difference. We will run into the action in just a few moments, but before we do, I wanted to, obviously with yourself on, being a big Cork fan, I wanted to get your opinion on the Pairc Rinn or nowhere situation at the minute. So I suppose to explain it and break it down for people. So obviously, originally the game was the Cork and Kerry Munster semi-final was supposed to be fixed in Pairc Queeve. Ed Sheeran came along and decided he was going to mess things up a little bit there. Obviously, Cork GAA must have not realised the championship was going to be in April, turned a blind eye to it. I don't really know, or what's going on there. Obviously, Ed Sheeran takes, I suppose, the main priority for Cork GAA there in that instance. So the game gets moved to Pairc Rinn. I think Kerry GAA then were inquiring to say that they wouldn't be able to get enough fans in the stadium, or maybe it wouldn't be fit for purpose and different things like that. And all sorts of different things said, really. It got moved to Killarney Stadium then, or Fitzgerald Stadium in Killarney, and the Cork footballers are taking their own stance, saying we won't play anywhere else but Pairc Rinn. The Cork fans are saying that as well. What's your take on it?
I'd be right behind the players. I even set up a petition on change.org as well. Like I've been in contact with so many Cork fans, and the ultimate feeling amongst us all was sickness. Like what? Why? Like I'm just struggling to find out what would be wrong with Páirc Rinn. Like for example, Walsh Park is good enough for Waterford to play Cork and Tipperary in the hurling championship. Cork and Park is good enough to play against Antrim in the Ulster Championship, and Cork and Park is around the same as Mike's Club pitch. So I don't see what's the issue there. Newbridge was good enough to play against Mayo. And when you look at the attendances for Cork and Kerry over the last few years, they've actually gone down. Kerry fans don't necessarily travel, and Cork fans would be more inclined to go to the hurling games. So, like, going through these averages from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I think it's a lazy excuse, to be honest with you. I like there is the argument Kerry players want to play in Fitzgerald Stadium. I don't think they'd mind playing at Páirc Rinn. I honestly think they'd beat us anyway. But look, I think it'll be a closer game if it was on a Páirc Rinn. It'd be a better spectacle. If it was on a Killarney, it'd be about a 30-40 point hammering. The way Kerry are going and the way we're going at the moment. So I'd be for the players to take a stance on this, because it's just elitism, to be honest with you. To favour Kerry in every way. And even looking back to 2021, Fitzgerald Stadium wasn't fit for purpose in a pandemic, but yet the Munster Countess say, oh yeah, it's Kerry's choice. I even put up a tweet on that last year to ask the Munster Council, why are you doing this? And they gave that exact reason. So if it was good enough for Kerry, it's good enough for Cork this year, and yes, you're going to strip home advantage away from you. Like it's ridiculous in a way, just to sue Kerry in a while. And another thing, if Kerry were playing Clare at Cusack Park, would they move it? No. If they were moving the game to Fratherfield, Waterford, would they move it back to Killarney? No. The Gaelic grounds? No. Or even Neville Park in Rathkeale? No. So why would you do it with Cork? And the thing, Kerry are so far ahead of Cork, they don't need to change the stadium. They're going to win anyway. So why is there need to change the stadium? And I agree with Colin O'Rourke. The last thing the Cork footballers need is to get a 40-30 point trouncing at Killarney in front of the watching world. Bring it back to Páirc Rinn. Make it a battle for this game. And I heard Sky were complaining about having vans behind the goal. You managed it in Newbridge. You'll manage it in Walsh Park. So why can't you manage it in Páirc Rinn? And there's loads of other stadiums up the country that is in worse condition than Páirc Rinn. Páirc Rinn is not perfect by any means. It's a shabby looking stadium, but at the same time, like, I don't see what's wrong with it when you look at Newbridge, Walsh Park, Corrigan Park. And about the Ed Sheeran concerts, Kevin O'Donovan mentioned this on the Southern Star podcast. The reason for it was where it's debt with the stadium at the moment. We need as much money as we can coming in. And look, this is the situation. And even someone from the Cork County Board was saying to Joe Canning before the hurling game the other night, look, it's the fact that split season wasn't really expected. Well, I suppose looking back at it, maybe some people would say it's a lazy excuse, but at the same time, what were the Cork County Board supposed to do? Like we said with the Ed Sheeran concert, put it in March when the league was on. They have to put it on sometime to gain more revenue. So, like, I mean, it's a mess in that sense, but I'd be totally for keeping it at Páirc Rinn. I don't see why Kerry need to move it to another stadium, move it to Killarney. I don't see why, to be honest with you. It's going to be even worse of a hammering, and it's not going to, like, whatever outcome this is, it's not going to end well in any party, really. Like for the Munster Council, they won't get their money in if Páirc Rinn is the venue. If Killarney is the venue, the Cork footballers will just not go there. So it'll be a forfeit. So the Munster Council, geez, they have a big decision to make in the next few weeks. But lads, just make it easy for yourselves. Move it back to Páirc Rinn. It's the only solution, definitely.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think they will eventually probably retract, and it will be in Páirc Rinn, because I don't think they can afford really to lose the revenue, do you know what I mean, that TV companies would be promised for that game. If it was a forfeit, obviously there'd be no game. So, player or fans would be missing out on watching the game, and there'd just be all sorts of chaos, really, and money problems and everything else. Not the TV companies are running out of money or anything like that, but obviously they pay to get a certain amount of games per year, and Sky in particular. And you've seen with Mayo as well, obviously not being in McHale Park this year. They were able to get cameras into, I think it was Pairc Sean McDermott, I think it was, on the opening day of the season. So yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I mean, is there an argument though? Although I do agree with you, is there an argument though at the same time that Cork GAA probably shouldn't really be scheduling Ed Sheeran concerts for, in that kind of championship season? Like, I know at the same time maybe they weren't. Like, I feel like the argument that they weren't aware that the All Ireland was going to be at the end of April, for me, it's just a little bit untrue. Maybe they were a little bit unlucky. Maybe they took a chance and they didn't realise it was going to fall. But I feel like, because it has been coming, like an All Ireland starting in April, like this has been in the works really since 2020. Like, it was supposed to start in April, I think, in 2020. It was supposed to start in April last year as well. It obviously didn't because of COVID. So, I mean, is there an argument there that maybe Cork GAA maybe should have done a bit more, due diligence and research maybe into it?
There is an argument, definitely, but as it stood in 2021, for example, when they were organising the Ed Sheeran, there was no split season in place. So the Cork County Board just dealt with it in their own way. Let's not forget, because of this Ed Sheeran concert, the hurlers suffer as well. They have only one home game, and that's against the All-Ireland champions. It happens to be against Limerick. They chose to move to Semple Stadium against Clare because they were kind of confident in their own ability that they'd beat Clare. I'm not sure will they beat Clare, but that's an argument for another day. But by playing it in Páirc Uí Rinn, Kevin O'Donovan mentioned this as well. They weren't looking at the results last year when we got hammered by 22 points. Moving it to Fitzgerald Stadium again just wasn't an option, because it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse for this team. And when you look at the age profile in our team, the only solution to resolve a bit of confidence in the team going forward is to have the game in Páirc Uí Rinn, not in Fitzgerald Stadium, where we're going to get a trouncing. We know that. But if it's on a Páirc Uí Rinn, we're going to make it a game. Like, the pitch is tight. That's no excuse. I think Kerry are still a very good team, but we might make it into a battle and make it a game for 50 or 60 minutes or so, like we did against Dublin in the Super 8s. But if we're going down to Killarney, we're just going to wave the white flag. As for the county board, look, I think it was kind of a lazy excuse. Someone saying to Gerard Canning that they didn't know it was a split season, but at the same time, in some way, I suppose it's a decent excuse when you think about it. Like, they were organising the concert in 2021, towards the end of it. The GAA didn't make their decision until, I don't know, very late on in 2021 or early 2022. So, it was a mess there was a bit of miscommunication from both sides of the fence. But the bottom line, we have to play this game at Páirc Uí Rinn, because Munster will lose out their revenue. If it's on a Killarney and Cork move down, they were going to get no game whatsoever. So just move it to Páirc Uí Rinn. Just end the story here and now. Colm O'Rourke said it at League Sunday. And that's all I have to say. Like, just move the game in Páirc Uí Rinn. Make common sense prevail. And look, just end the saga once and for all, because the Munster GAA Council do not need it.
Yeah, Pairc Farrelly says here, move Cork v Kerry match back by 1 or 2 weeks after the concert. I'm not sure what ramifications that would have in terms of delaying games, and you might have to push the Munster Championship back more. I'm not sure if they could do that, but yeah, it is a little bit unusual. And as you said there as well, like in terms of Kerry, like if it was Fraher Field or it was Clare, if it was Limerick, I'm sure they wouldn't want the game moved back to Killarney. Like, I do think they'll beat Cork relatively comfortably in Páirc Uí Rinn anyway. Maybe it won't be as comfortable, or it won't be as of a demolition as it would be in Killarney. Like, I think in Páirc Uí Rinn you might be looking at 10, 11 points. Maybe Kerry might pull away in the final 15 to 20 minutes, whereas in Killarney you could be looking at a 20-point hammering, and the game could effectively be over after 20, 25 minutes like it was last year. So, like, what do you kind of boil it down to for Kerry? Why do you think they are so, or Kerry GAA are so adamant on bringing the game to Killarney? Like, is it revenue? Is it for fans, or is there something else there? Like, because it's a hard one really for me to kind of put my finger on it, because I'm sure they can generate the revenue anyway. Like, I don't know.
Like Killarney, I've mentioned this so many times on my channel and all. Like Killarney is one of the most expensive places in the country at the moment. They just want to bring in tourists into the area for a Munster final day, a sunny evening on a Saturday. That's what they want. Like, for example, if it's on in Cork, I don't think there'd be much tourist attractions around Pairc Rinn as there is down in Killarney. That's particularly one of the reasons. I think it's a revenue issue, really, and the Munster Council as well. I don't think the players like David Clifford, Stephen O'Brien, Micheál Burns, all them, or Jack O'Connor himself don't mind where the game is on. Like, they're going to win anyway. And look, they'd want to play in much stadiums as possible. Like, they played in Newbridge, they played in other small stadiums around the country, Cusack Park, so many times in Clare. So I don't think it'll be an issue for the players. They'd want to play in Pairc Rinn, definitely, and try a few players out for that game. But I honestly think it's a revenue thing. Like, I've seen the prices in Killarney. It's basically a money-making scheme. And for the Munster Council, for Killarney in general, I think it's basically a money-making scheme. I don't think the players had anything to do with really. They were concentrating on the game on Sunday, and rightly so, against Mayo. It was just the tourism down in Killarney. I don't know, have you been down there, Aaron? The prices there are ridiculous. Like, if you get an ice cream or something, I think it's €5 for one person. I mean, it's ridiculous pricing, really. And look, I honestly think it was revenue. It wasn't for playing issue, because, as you said rightly, whatever stadium Kerry or Cork playing, Kerry are going to beat us anyway. It's a matter of what the scoreline will be. And I actually think if it's moved in Pairc Rinn, I actually think it'll benefit the Kerry footballers more, because what's the benefit in winning by about 20, 30 points rather than being in a battle for 50 to 60 minutes? So I think the Kerry players would definitely want it in Pairc Rinn. I think it's the tourist attractions that wanted in Killarney, and I just think it's wrong. Like, it's wrong for in the Cork footballers' sense as well. Like, they've worked so hard for this game, and look, for not to be played at Pairc Rinn for a bit of cash, I mean, it's ridiculous, really. And the GAA have been synonymous for generating money. They can't do now. They have to put the players first. They have to put the fans first for this type of occasion. Just play it in Pairc Rinn in the Saga now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the JMac podcast there says, Honda lads, Cavan Division 4 champions 2022, and looking to make mates with Pairc Farrelly there. So there you go. And I suppose perfect time really for tuning in, because we'll look through some of the weekend's games and big talking points then. And we'll start with the Division 4 final, Cavan 210, Tipperary 15 points. It was a close game in the end. I mean, Tipperary very nearly pulled it back in the end. I kind of wish they did win, to be honest, because I put an accumulator on and it would have been a little bit richer had Tipperary pulled off this victory. But in the end, a big win for Cavan.
Massive win for Cavan, yeah. And actually watching the game, I don't want to disappoint John, but I thought Tipperary were actually the much better team over the 70 minutes. Mark Russell was outstanding from midfield. Like, one of his points from the sideline was absolutely superb. And a clue, there is some brilliant footballers in Division 4, and thank God the game was shown by TG Carr. Yeah, Cavan, they did the job. I think John mentioned in his story as well, he was this team would give me a heart attack someday, and yeah, it seemed that way in Croke Park. It was a very heart-stopping stuff for Cavan, but they won the game in the end. I think both sides would be happy enough. Like, Tipperary going to the championship, they'll play Waterford the first game out. You have to expect them to win that. And they could get to a provincial final, definitely Tipperary. Like, Cavan, they might do as well, but a trophy there in the bag for Cavan. Like, Paddy Lynch was outstanding. Thomas Galligan breaking through. The midfield was very good as well. Raymond Galligan in goal. And yeah, brilliant victory for Cavan, definitely. And I was a bit surprised about the downing of their celebrations afterwards. I thought they'd be over the moon, really, about winning a trophy in Croke Park for the first time since the 1950s. But in the end, like, Cavan, it was like any other game. Maybe a draw or something after the game. But well done to Cavan anyway. Not sure about the lack of celebration. But Tipperary, they'll be a coming team this year, like Mark Russell, Conor Sweeney, going along very nicely.
Yeah, 100%. I think maybe for Cavan, probably the reason why there probably wasn't big celebrations was because of, well, it is Division 4, and let's be perfectly honest, they probably shouldn't be in Division 4, really. They should be really setting their sights on Division 2, I think, to be perfectly honest there. But yeah, I mean, looking at these two, could you see any of these two maybe doing anything special maybe in the championship this year? Or, I mean, both have winnable enough games, I think, on the opening day. Obviously, Cavan play Antrim, which will be a tough game. I think that'd be very even. You'd fancy Tipperary to get over Waterford there as well. So, I mean, could you see any of these two maybe going on a bit of a run, or could these two end up regrouping at some stage in the Tailteann Cup?
I think Cavan will probably go into the Tailteann Cup because Armagh and Donegal are just way too good, to be honest. The Antrim will be a realistic game to win, but as you said, their Antrim are a very tough team. So I think Cavan are more likely to go to the Tailteann Cup than Tipperary are. Not to say Cavan are a worse team, it's just Cavan are in a tougher side of the draw in their provincial championship. For Tipperary, they'll definitely be Waterford. The next round then is against Clare Limerick. And by the time they go to the semi-final, that could be a big battle. It's a big derby there. So, like Tipperary have a good record against the likes of Clare and Limerick in the past. They'll have a good record of getting to finals in Munster. Like, they've got to one in 2020. They got to one in 2016 as well. So, like Clare, for example, haven't got to a Munster final since 2012. Limerick since 2010. So it's big pressure on them two counties. There's no pressure on Tipperary going into it. So I think Tipperary have a realistic chance of reaching the provincial final, but Cavan, look, I don't know, would they be happy with the Tailteann Cup? I know it's a trophy in Croke Park, but bigger fish to fry, match. Thanks for the cheese, only Paddy Lynch. We would be screwed, yeah. Definitely Garrett McKieran was outstanding as well. Don't forget him. Yeah, but I suppose Tipperary would be definitely good for a provincial final in Munster, but for Cavan, they might chop me still. Like, they have a good record against the likes of Armagh over the last few years. And of course they beat Donegal in 2020. So who's to know, Cavan might reach an Ulster final, but I think right now Tipperary are more realistic to potentially reach a Munster final.
Yeah, and moving on then, you had Louth 114, Limerick 12 points. Interesting enough, obviously, you'll have both of these two sides going into the All-Ireland series as well, so neither one of these two sides will be eligible for the Tailteann Cup this year. And I suppose for Louth, I mean, they're on quite the run there at the minute. I mean, 6 straight wins. I think they're the only county in the entirety of the National Football League to go on a 6-game straight win streak. So, I mean, for Louth, they're really, really riding a crest of a wave at the minute. And Mickey Hart, I mean, his job is really coming through, and Samuel Roy and, Kieran Byrne, all these lads, Tom Jackson, Liam Jackson, they really, really are shooting the lights out for Louth at the minute.
They are, and the consensus about Louth going into the game actually was their one-man team, Samuel Roy, which I thought before the game, but looking at the game, Kieran Byrne, outstanding, 4 points from play, Tom Jackson, very good, Tommy Dernan, James Calliff's a very good goalkeeper as well, so yeah, there's positives for Louth. I suppose going into the Leinster Championship, they probably need to avoid the Tailteann Cup because they're going to play Kildare if they win their first round game of the quarterfinals. So that'll be still a tough game to get over. As for Limerick, look, it's not the end of the world. They were probably the better team in the first half, but just ran out of steam in the end. They're a good, strong team, but this will take time for Billy Lee's men to, break the duck and progress in Division 2. What's interesting about Limerick, like I was chatting to a Limerick fan the day before the game, actually, their aim is to consolidate in Division 2. I don't know it's the same for Louth, considering Louth beat them, probably it is as well. But Limerick are going along nicely. I'd still be positive enough for them. Like, they have a first game against Clare, that'll still be a tough game. That'll be some game to watch. Hopefully that'll be shown on TV. It probably won't, though, knowing RTE. And knowing the GAA in general, it won't be shown. But it's a real shame. But look, I think both sides are going along nicely. But I was more impressed with Louth because of not their over-reliance on Samuel Roy this time. Like, they have some very good players all over the field, and they definitely showed that. And a word of Mickey Hart as well. It definitely consolidates his place as one of the best managers in Gaelic football history, along with the likes of Sean Boyle and Mick O'Dwyer. Like, the guy's an absolute legend. To get Louth to Division 2, what a job Mickey Hart's done. And fair play to Louth, fair play to all players. But I think both sides would be going into the championship with a lot of positivity.
Yeah, JMac podcast says there, Cathal Jackson, Tom Jackson, Michael Jackson. So the the Jackson Five very much alive and well in Louth's team there at the minute. Sir Klopp says Louth underdogs for Leinster, and that's what I was going to ask you next, because Louth obviously play Carlow on the opening day of the Leinster Championship. You'd expect them to obviously come through that, with all due respect to Carlow. They then play Kildare, which is a very tough draw for them to get, but they do have Kildare at home, I believe. So, I mean, could they cause a shock, a surprise there? I mean, it'd be very unlikely. It'd be a big shock, but interesting enough, the last time Louth did reach a Leinster final, they actually beat Kildare in 2010, and Kildare actually went on to reach an All-Ireland semi-final in the same year. So it'd be interesting if you ask both supporters again, would they get the same fate? I mean, it'd be interesting to see what they would say. But what's your thoughts on that? Could Louth maybe spring a surprise or two? Could they upset Kildare? What do you reckon?
You know what, according to fate, they'll probably win the Leinster Championship now. Like, it's about time they won it after that decision in 2010. Like, I was watching that game. I was absolutely heartbroken for them. Towards the end of it, I was interviewing JP Rooney on the podcast a few months ago as well. And, it was heartbreaking for them. They just couldn't lift themselves off the floor. But this is the first time in a long while that Louth football is really on the up. And fair play to Pete Fitzpatrick for getting Mickey Hart. And I think Kildare are in a better state than they were in 2010, for example. I think in 2010, they went in with a bit of overconfidence. I don't think that'll be the issue with Glenn Ryan. Like, Glenn Ryan's very relaxed going into his interviews. So, judging by that, I think Kildare might have a bit too much for Louth. But obviously, I'd love Louth to win the Leinster Championship, judging by what happened 12 years ago now. It's hard to believe it was that long ago. But yeah, it wouldn't be brilliant now if Louth played Meath in the Leinster final and Louth beat him with a last-minute goal. That would just be brilliant for all corners of the country, really. And I think we'll be all celebrating a Louth victory, going to the pub that Sunday night. But look, I think Kildare will still be a tough assignment. But look, wouldn't it be absolutely brilliant if they met me in the final and won with a last-minute goal from Sam Roy or maybe even Tom Jackson once again?
Yeah, it would be incredible. All right. I mean, I wouldn't want to see Dublin get beat by Louth, but if Dublin maybe did slip up somewhere along the way, maybe Louth would be the second team I would support there, no doubt about it. In terms of Limerick, I mean, obviously they'd be disappointed with this performance. Like, I thought, well, maybe not performance, but obviously with the result. I thought, like, generally speaking, I thought they were largely in control of the game in the first half. They were leading for majority of different parts. I remember they took Nash off and brought Robbie Burke on, and although he kicked 2 points, I thought taking Nash off was probably a bit of a mistake maybe there. But what were your thoughts overall on Limerick and them going into the Munster Championship? I mean, they could definitely be a team that could very well end up in a Munster final, obviously given the side of the draw that they're on.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And Clare, they'd be definitely on their place for a Munster final. Look at the draw there. Like, Clare technically in the same division now as Limerick, so that would be a brilliant game to watch. But of course, it won't be shown on RTE. Look, if they get to a semi-final, I think they'd be favourites going to the Tipperary game. But as I've said previously, with Tipperary, they've more experience of getting to a Munster final. Like, look, it's going to be a tough assignment for Limerick, don't get me wrong, but they could definitely do it. Like, Billy Lee is a very good coach. Josh Ryan, excellent forward, that showed his form again in Croke Park. Peter Nash, James Naughton, they have players all over the field. And I suppose that was a bit of a mistake for Billy Lee, but it's a learning curve for them, definitely. And even looking at the Cork game last year, they got hammered by 8 points. They got beat by 5 points in this game against Louth. It's just small little tweaks that Limerick need to get amongst the big boys again. But I think even if they don't do well in the championship this year, they'll definitely be looking forward, relishing Division 2 football next season. Like, they're playing Dublin, Cork, Meath, all them Derry as well. Like, geez, Limerick will be bouncing for that. But they need to get the support behind them as well, because it's largely a rugby and hurling county, and soccer as well. Treaty United are doing pretty well as well. So the supporters need to get behind their team in Limerick, and they're going well at the moment. They have some very good, nice players all over the field. Bill Lee's doing all he can. So I just hope Limerick football supporters will get out and support their team now for that clash against Clare starting off. So I'd be positive going to the championship if I was a Limerick player. Like, Billy Lee's doing some great stuff there, and Limerick doing very, very well. And I think it will continue going to the championship. But as I said, like, if they don't do well, they'll relish next year, Division 2. They'll be playing some top teams next year. They'll definitely be looking forward to that.
Yeah, Billy Jean has done a terrific job at Limerick. You're killing me here, John. But yeah, I suppose moving on then, Galway 22 points, Roscommon 120. Roscommon, I mean, they just about got over the line in the end, but another big win for Roscommon. Back-to-back wins, obviously, now over Galway. Big win for them. I mean, both sides probably at an even trajectory, but obviously we'll get on to, I see plenty of comments flying in there about the Mayo and Kerry game. We'll certainly get onto that in a brief moment. But look, both of these two sides, obviously, regardless of this result, will be looking at that Connacht Championship, having seen Mayo and think they have a serious chance. And I think Roscommon in particular, with the fact that they're on, I suppose, the easier side of the draw, I think they really, really will fancy their chances.
Oh, they definitely will, yeah. And even they got 2 wides in the last year. I think it was maybe 1 or 2. So that's about 3 or 4 wides in the last 3 games. Now, that's a very good record for Roscommon. They're hitting the lights out now with Stephen Porcher, who would have known Roscommon have forwards in their team that can cause damage for the opposition. Only if you knew that last year and you wouldn't have been booted out. So, yeah, Roscommon, very good game. And in general, this game was the most exciting of the weekend. Like 120 to 22 points for a football game. You wouldn't have said that a few years ago. Like a very good game indeed. Like for Galway as well, awarded Paul Conroy 6 points from play from midfield. Oh, what a player this guy is. And he seems to get better with age. Like he's a very good athlete. Even Damien Comer, 4 points from play. And to get Galway players up to these numbers and still lose the game, it just shows you how good the team Roscommon are. And the goal as well, Dermot Murtagh, what a goal that was. And another forward that Roscommon could add as well, Kieran Murtagh, was excellent the other day with 5 points. So, geez, Roscommon, they're going into the championship now. And I think if Roscommon get to a semi-final, I think their fans will be absolutely over the moon with that. I think it's a realistic possibility this year. Even if they don't win Connacht, if they get to the final, which they're expected to do, they only need to win 2 games to get to the semi-final. Then I think Roscommon can definitely do that. Like, the last time they were in a normal quarterfinal. I remember the Mayo game now, but before that was Cork in 2010. So since 2010, really only 2 proper quarterfinals out of the Super 8 games, one-off games, I mean. So look, I think Roscommon would learn from them past experiences and will give this quite a good go against the semi-finals. I don't think they're good enough quite to beat the likes of Kerry just yet, but Roscommon football is definitely on the up. And Anthony Cunningham, awarding him, like, there was pressure on him going into the year, real pressure on him, considering Stephen Porcher left the team. But he's done an amazing job getting these forwards to fire. Like, Keane McKeown's an outstanding player. Well, Connor Cox, Donny Smith, one of the top scorers in Division 2 as well. So all good in the hood for Roscommon. But for Galway, not so bad either. They'll be thinking of the Mayo game now, with Shane Walsh back in the team, of course. So, geez, I'm looking forward to Galway Mayo now. Should be a very good game. And even looking forward to the Connacht final this year. Should be 2 crackers of games.
Yeah, and Vince says here, as a Mayo man, I'm convinced Ross will play Kerry in this year's decided All-Ireland final, maybe he means there. Mayo are over. Gutted. Wish I was a Roscommon fan as well. Vince says there, Roscommon are the future. So certainly maybe some Mayo fans definitely not too happy with the way that yesterday's game gone. And you were speaking there about the Galway and Mayo game. And in particular, for example, we were saying there, or obviously a lot of people have been saying really about how open Mayo's defence was in that game, like conceding 319 in total, conceded 3 goals. I think there was 3 or 4 other goal chances as well. Given Galway's nature, like they're the best attacking team in the country, statistically speaking, there at the minute. You know, with Shane Walsh maybe back fit. I mean, it could, like Galway beating Mayo, I think is a realist. It really, really is a possibility. Now, I do think Galway still have plenty, a couple of issues there defensively that they will need to iron out. But generally speaking, with their attack, I mean, they could cause a lot of issues for Mayo, especially if they do still. I'm hearing Henley's still going to be out, Brendan Harrison's still going to be out. There might be, maybe Oisin Mullen might be back by then. But generally speaking, that could be a very, very difficult task for the men from Mayo.
And let's look at the other side of the defence as well. Like, Galway's defence isn't exactly brilliant as well. Like, they conceded 120 against Roscommon, they conceded 217 against Cork, 310 against Offaly. So maybe there's an opportunity there for Mayo to exploit the Galway defence as well. But 2 bad defences, 2 good attacks, with Killy O'Connor back for Mayo now. So I'm really, really looking forward to this game. Look, it's going to be a very exciting game. I think two poor defenses, two good attacks. Yeah, but I honestly think at halftime, I said this. I think on your live watch along as well. I just think Mayo didn't look interested in that league final. Maybe that was an issue. Like, been talking to a few Mayo fans, that was stupidity putting Pairc O'Hara and David Clifford all alone. Like, Mayo will not make that same mistake again. Surely to God. So they might have Oisin Mullen back. So maybe Mayo aren't as bad as what people think. Maybe it was just a good Kerry team that put them away. So or maybe it was just the fact Mayo didn't care about the final and were focusing on this Galway game. So look, it's going to be a very interesting game looking at both sides of the fence. I'd be definitely looking forward to watching this game. This should surely be shown on RT, but there'll be huge rows. But anyway, look, there'll be a very good atmosphere for this game, very good appetite, and definitely looking forward to this game. And yeah, two bad defenses, two good attacks. Should be some fireworks in this game.
Yeah, the JMac podcast saying there as well. You called Roscommon last week, fair play, expert analysis as usual there. Well, I suppose I've got plenty of things wrong in the past, no doubt about that, but thankfully enough, we're getting the Roscommon bet a little bit right there at the minute. Sir Klopp says Galway looks suspect defensively, but you'd fancy them in a shootout with Mayo if Conroy, Walsh, etc. stay fit. Rossi's motoring well, but if they don't make at least a quarter final, it'll be seen as a failure. Yeah. I suppose, to be fair, considering how well Roscommon have played this year and considering the trajectory that they're on and considering, they definitely should be making a Connacht final anyway, with the fact they'll probably play Sligo in a semi-final. You would expect them to get over that. I suppose then it really depends on that qualifier draw. And when you look at some of the teams that are going to be dropping out of Ulster, like they could end up playing a Tyrone maybe if Tyrone get through Ulster, Monaghan, Armagh, some of these teams. So it could be very, very difficult for them potentially. And I think it will depend on who they play. Gavin was saying there as well, are Roscommon going to stay up next year in the league? What do you think about that? I mean, Roscommon are sort of the yo-yo team, the Norwich City maybe of Gaelic football. I mean, are they going to stay up this time around, or could they be going back down again?
I'd actually be confident for Roscommon fans looking, if they keep their attack motoring and they keep their defence solid as ever, I think, look, Roscommon, there's no reason why not they could stay up. But we say Kildare have potential of staying up, but they didn't in the end despite performing well. So there is the danger for that. I actually think, looking at the two sides, I think Galway might be better equipped looking at the two teams next season. Like, it's going to be very close between the two sides. But even looking at the two sides staying up, like if you're thinking of Roscommon and Galway both staying up, who's going to go down then? Like, Armagh look very impressive. Donegal, like there's the arguments that Michael Murphy will retire in the next few years. Like, Monaghan, we say they'll go down every year, and they don't. They'll probably stay up again on the last day next year. It's predictable at this stage. Tyrone are a good side. Kerry will never go down. Mayo, I don't think will go down either. So Division 1's going to be as competitive as this year, in my opinion. Like, you have some very good sides going into this division. Like, there is the argument Roscommon just get relegated as soon as they go back up. But I think this next year could be quite different for them. I think they have a very good attack, they have a very good defence. And with Keane McKeown, Conor Cox, Doty Smith, Enda Smith, Cathal Heenan will get even better. They have other forwards coming up through the ranks, Adam McDermott, Dara Craig as well. Let's not forget about those two lads as well. Like Colin Walsh as well. Like, geez, Roscommon is a very good young talent coming through. And I'd be very optimistic if I was a Roscommon fan, but it's a bit early to answer that question. But right now, I think they could actually stay up. I think they have some very good attackers, they have some very good defenders, but it'll be very tough looking at the teams. Not necessarily Roscommon are bad, but the other teams will be dying to stay up as well, as equally as Roscommon.
Yeah, and Sir Klopp says Rossies have always disappointed in the business end of the championship, even with how well they're going. I'm not convinced they'll get to a semi-final unless they win Connacht and get an easy quarter final. I suppose the thing is with Roscommon is because they haven't won too many Connacht championships in their history, and when they've come through Connacht, it's just such a big deal for counties like Roscommon. You see how much celebrations really that has happened when Roscommon win it. It's such a big thing to win that and then get yourself back up for an All-Ireland quarter final. I think that's maybe sometimes why they've disappointed a little bit, because they've put so much energy into themselves to come through Connacht. Maybe this year might be a little bit different, but we'll obviously have to wait and see. Discussing the Kerry and Mayo game then, I mean, it was a very comprehensive win in the end for Kerry, 319 to 13 points for Mayo. And I suppose at this point, really, I mean, I know a lot of people have kind of said maybe Kerry might flatter to deceive in Croke Park or whatever. The record in Croke Park hasn't been too good. And, you know, sometimes they have this habit of kind of, I suppose, choking really on semi-finals or whatever. And I suppose Mayo have that in finals. But I suppose for Kerry, I mean, after a dominant display against Mayo, one of the best forwards in the country, if not the best, and David Clifford, top-class manager, their defence seems to be fixed. I mean, surely Kerry do win the All-Ireland this year. It almost feels harder for them not to win it at this stage.
It does, yeah. Like, the talent all over this Kerry team. And even the goalkeeper, who I had reservations about a few weeks ago, Shane Ryan, was absolutely superb as well. Kicked it free. What a performance from him. What a kick-out strategy as well. The Kerry looks so good all over the field. Jason Foley from full back. I've had my reservations about him over the last few years, time and time again. Even Brian Hurley rinsing him last year, but that's not going to happen this year. Like, my God, what a player he's turned into. And even Stephen O'Cumber has to come back into this team. Joe O'Connor can't even get this team in midfield. And as you mentioned, David Clifford, 528 overall, 522 from play in the whole league, and that's Division 1. This guy isn't human. Like, oh my God, he's absolutely superb. And Pairc did all he could to try and stop him, but there's just no stopping him whatsoever. He's basically the Messi or Ronaldo of this sport, and he's only 23, will still have a few years left of him. But it's all about the Kerry management keeping you fit now. Like, you seen it against Tyrone last year. Once he went off injured, Kerry struggled. Like, the main objective now for Kerry is to keep David Clifford fit. I know Paul Gainey performed well as well, 5 points, 4 from play. Sean O'Shea has to come back to the team. Mihal Burns, Stephen O'Brien, Tony Brosnan couldn't even get in this team. That tells you how good this team can become, and the glue that gets it all together. Jack O'Connor as manager, Paddy Talley at the back as well with his assistant. Oh my God, like, Kerry have all the ingredients of getting the All-Ireland title this year. They look flawless. And I don't see who's going to stop them this year. Possibly maybe an Ulster side on a bad day, maybe a Tyrone or someone like last year. But even that, like, Kerry have improved defensively. They've improved vastly. Like, they're absolutely flawless in nearly every position now. And it's going to be a tanking in Pairc, Rinn or Killarney or wherever it is now. And in the Munster final, possibly the quarters as well. It's once they get to the semi-final will be the challenge. But Kerry looks so set for an All-Ireland title. And as for Mayo, look, it isn't the end of the world for Mayo. I know it was a hammering, but look, Galway is the main aim for them. And I've said this throughout the last few weeks. Look, they're focused on the Galway game. They were never going to be focused on this game. Yes, the Division 1 trophy is a nice accolade to have, but Galway ideally is a more important game to win. So Mayo will be gunning for that. And just a few issues that need to be fixed before then. But again, it's not the end of the world. They were just facing a brilliant Kerry team. Lessons to be learned. But Kerry, my God, they look absolutely flawless, Aaron. And I'm just fearing for what will happen in the Munster Championship.
Yeah, and I'm fearing for what might happen if they come up against Dublin maybe at some point in a semi-final or potentially more. I mean, we'll obviously have to wait and see. Pairc says here, Pairc Farley with an earlier comment there, says Tyrone, only team that can beat Kerry in the Championship later this year. No other team has it to beat Kerry. Kerry to win Sam after 8 years, or Tyrone to retain All-Ireland for the first time ever. And it's a great point there. I mean, Tyrone obviously do seem to have this knack of beating Kerry in recent years. I know Kerry beat Tyrone back in 2019, but obviously this Brian Dooher and Fergal Logan team beat Kerry in the All-Ireland semi-final last year. They're the only team to beat Kerry this year as well, and obviously that was a must-win game for Tyrone, maybe not so much so for Kerry. Maybe they took their foot off the gas a little bit for that, but what do you think about that? Could Tyrone maybe be the only team potentially that could catch Kerry cold? I mean, it could be fixed for them to play each other in All-Ireland semi-final, possibly even a quarter-final if Tyrone don't get through Ulster. So, I mean, that would be a very intriguing meeting if it was to happen.
It would be definitely like historically speaking, Kerry actually struggled against Ulster teams. Even the great 09 and 10 teams, they lost to Down in the quarterfinals. They lost to Donegal in 2012. They lost to Tyrone again in 2021. They lost to Tyrone in 08, 05, 03. So historically speaking, Kerry don't have a good record against Ulster teams. And I would definitely agree with Pairc there. Like, the only team that can beat them is Tyrone. Like, I don't know, will Armagh beat them? They have a very good team at the moment. But look, you have to fancy Kerry without a doubt to win it this year. Like, even in an All-Ireland final, if they come up against Tyrone, I actually fancy Kerry to win that game, despite their record against Ulster teams. Like, oh my God, and as David rightly said there, like, Clifford's absolutely unmarkable, and look, if the defenders will just do all they can on him, like Kevin Flahoy did a few years ago, Pairc O'Hora did, Johnny Cooper did for Dublin a few years ago. There's just no stopping him. He's just an outstanding talent, and the main aim, like, I think the only way that Kerry will lose the All Ireland is if Clifford gets injured, similar to what happened last year against Tyrone. If he keeps fit, Kerry are winning the All Ireland. Simple as that. As much as I don't want them to win the All Ireland this year as a Cork fan, Kerry are just flawless this year. They're an absolute machine. And to think Kerry haven't won an All Ireland since 2014, that'll make them even more hungry to win an All Ireland this year. And yeah, Kerry all the way for the All Ireland. But I actually wouldn't be surprised if Ulster side come up to Croke Park and shock them.
Yeah, and Vince says Tyrone, the dark horses, they are hungry, mean, and crew cut. Vicious competitors, and yeah, it's a fair point there as well. I mean, Tyrone are just one of them teams that you can never quite write off. They were written off last year, and then they seem to come back from the dead. But as David says here, what's up with the Tyrone camp? There seems to be something going on behind the scenes. Loads of players dropping out of the panel. It is a great point, and yeah, like you always hear rumors of other players leaving the panel as well. You just don't know what's obviously going on there as well. And it is quite strange because I know you've obviously had a lot of Dublin players opting out, but I think Dublin were almost so successful. They won 6 All-Irelands. You could see why a lot of them did opt out, because they'd be like, well, what else do we have to achieve? Whereas Tyrone could, really kind of not necessarily like it wouldn't prove that they're better than the Tyrone team of the 2000s, but they could almost overtake them in terms of legacy if they were to win the All-Ireland again this year, because they'd become the first ever Tyrone team to win back-to-back All-Irelands. And obviously that great team in the 2000s of Canavan, of, Owen Mulligan, all these lads, like, they didn't win back-to-back All-Irelands. So, like, what's your thoughts on that, on some of the Tyrone players opting out and everything else? I can see it does seem a little bit odd.
It does, definitely. Like, Paul Donaghy was the latest, of course. Like, Lee Brennan, Mark Bradley, they were outstanding players that are getting any other county team. But I suppose it happened with Mickey Hart as well. Ronan O'Neill quit the panel because he wasn't getting enough game time. Maybe there's just a culture thrown. We have to play for excellent forwards. But maybe, like, those players need to bite their tongue and just accept they're behind them in the pecking order at the moment. And we've seen how honest the Tyrone players are in interviews. Like, you've seen it in off the ball interviews. Darren McCurry recently with Thomas Niblock, and then Carl McShane with Ashton O'Reilly as well. See how positive, or how honest they are at the moment. So that's a positive sign for Tyrone, that the players are honest to what happens behind the scenes. But we still haven't got the issue of why these players are leaving the panel. Like Paul Donaghy, I've been saying for years, is an excellent forward, and we're getting any other county team. Maybe he'd be good enough to make the Tyrone team. But look, I think it's just a culture within the Tyrone team in general. Like, you've seen it with Ronan O'Neill, you've seen it with other forwards in the past as well. Kyle Coney was another excellent forward that couldn't necessarily get in the starting 15 as well. So, like, I don't know, is it just a culture in Tyrone that forwards think that they're better than they are? Maybe that's the issue there. They're excellent forwards, no, don't get me wrong, but the likes of Darren McCurry, Colin McShane, Conor Moyle are just better forwards than the Chasey Pack at the moment. And I think these Tyrone players need to accept that. And I think the issue is that these players just don't accept the truth, in all honesty.
Yeah, and I suppose lastly on Mayo, I suppose before we discuss the Hurling League final, Alan says Mayo need Durkin, Mullen, and McLaughlin back in the half back line. Need the pace, and I suppose that is the point with Mayo, isn't it? I suppose they're missing them big runners. Like obviously, Colm O'Rourke was, I suppose, speaking about it a bit on the Sunday game, but I mean they're obviously missing those big sort of players that are so good at carrying the ball out from the back. And I think Paddy Durkin's been a huge miss. I think he's been one of Mayo's top performers in the last probably 3-4 years, and obviously Owen McLaughlin's a big player since he's come into the team. Oisin Mullen obviously as well. So I mean, with those injuries and with those players back for Mayo, I mean, you would expect them to improve, and I would still give them the edge over Galway at this moment in time. But I mean, there does seem to be a lot of injuries there with Mayo, and that does seem to be a cause for concern.
It definitely is, yeah. And but even looking at the going to the semi-final against Dublin, like they had the injury concerns with Oisin Mullen, Cillian O'Connor, and they still got over that hurdle. So there is, fighting qualities in this Mayo team. It's the question, can they do it to the final, basically? But for Mayo, I've been speaking to a few Mayo fans, and they're all quite confident if they had the likes of Owen McLaughlin, Oisin Mullen, Cillian O'Connor, all fully fit and ready to go, ready for road, they'd probably win against Kerry. But because of this injury crisis in Mayo at the moment, they're struggling. And it's a problem that James Horan needs to fix, and pretty sharpish, because Galway's in 2 or 3 weeks now. It's coming right around the corner. So that'll be a huge cause for concern for James Horan going into them weeks in the championship. But then again, like if they lose to Galway, it's not really the end of the world. I know there's difficult teams going into the Tailteann Cup, the qualifier system in Sam Maguire. So Mayo will have it harder than potentially when they reached the All-Ireland final in previous years coming through the qualifiers. But at the same time, like you only need to win 2 games this year in the qualifiers to get to an All-Ireland quarter-final, to get to Croke Park. So I suppose that's not a negative in some sort for Mayo, considering the quality of players they have. But to win All-Ireland, they probably need all their players fit. Are they going to get all their players fit all in once on one particular day? I'm not so sure. Like that's a challenge that Mayo need to overcome pretty sharpish if they're going to beat the likes of Kerry or even a Tyrone later on down the line.
Yeah, and Alan says here as well, Jordan Flynn picked up an injury as well, hopefully not too serious. And yeah, it seems to be any young players, like once they a lot of them seem to be picking up injuries, and the worry would be for Mayo is they're one Ryan O'Donoghue injury away from a bit of a crisis really in their forward line, because I think Ryan O'Donoghue is one of their only real natural shooters, obviously without Cillian O'Connor. So that definitely could be a worry, all right, from a Mayo perspective. We'll touch on the Hurling League final, I suppose, for the next couple of minutes. It was Waterford 420, Cork 123. What were your thoughts on this as a Cork fan? A bit of a demolition in the end, I suppose. I mean, I know it finished as a 6-point game, but it was very, very comfortable for Waterford in the end.
It was a very, very comfortable game for Waterford, and considering Jamie Barron, Austin Gleeson, a few of their players as well were missing for this game, and Cork still couldn't beat them. It kind of shows like Cork fans are a bit delusional in the past few weeks. We were thinking, I'm saying on my own podcast as well, I've been having Cork fans on to me, we have one hand of the Liam McCarthy Cup. No, lads, it doesn't work like that. We have to beat the big teams in these big particular games. And with Waterford, they were without their first 2 players, Jamie Barron and Austin Gleeson, and we still lost the game. So, I mean, like, I don't know where Cork owe to at the moment. I think there's a few tweaks needed to this team. First of all, Shane Kingston, I'm not sure why he doesn't start. He's our best hurler of the team. Like, that's like saying David Clifford, you're kicked off the Kerry team. I mean, why are we putting Shane Kingston on the bench? He's undoubtedly our best hurler at the moment. At the moment, people will argue, Patrick Horgan. Lads, it's not 2013 or 2014. This is 2022. Shane Kingston's our best player at the moment, and he's not in the starting 15. I mean, it's ridiculous to think that. And actually, on Horgan, I actually think he slows the team down a small bit. I actually think he'd be better off not starting in this team. I know it's not necessarily a bad thing for Cork going down the line. Like, it is bad for Horgan fanboys and all that. But when you look at the forwards we have, I think Conor Lehan, Seamus Hartney, Robbie O'Flynn, Shane Barrett, Alan Connolly, and Shane Kingston are all better players. That's 6 forwards I've named. They're all better than Patrick Horgan at this particular moment in time. Look, when you look at the stats, Patrick Horgan's only scored 2 points from playing the last 2 games. Patrick Horgan's won 3 from playing 1 game. So, Like, it tells you, like, he's going back a small bit. Like, he's only scored overall in the league, I think, 1-6 from play. And that's not really impressive whatsoever in any shape or form. So, look, we need to fix up our full back line as well. And this game probably showed that we missed Darragh O'Leary. He went off with an injury against Kilkenny in the semi-final. He was missing for this game, and our defence got torn apart. Like, Damien Cahalane, I would say, like, Damien Cahalane is not a hurler, he's a footballer. I don't know why he's in the full back line. In all honesty, Kieran Joyce, he played well in midfield in the first game. Why do you need to change it? Put him in midfield throughout the championship and throughout the league. Like, we have the players. There's no doubt we have the players to win the All-Ireland. It's just tactical decisions, a bit of braveness as well, like the likes of dropping Patrick Horgan, a bit like what Mayo should do, drop Aidan O'Shea. Like, they're getting to that stage of their career now. They need to be dropped in favour of young talents now. It's the time for that. And maybe that's not a particularly bad thing. Patrick Horgan come off the bench and do well for us in the next few games when players are getting tired. But yeah, enough of me ranting really about Cork, about Waterford. They look the real deal. Even without Jamie Barron, without Austin Gleeson. Wow, Stephen Bennett, outstanding. Patrick Curran, Tyke de Burke, and Corrick Daly, yet another player to add to this brilliant team. And my God, Waterford look a very good prospect at the moment. Conor Prunty at full back. The question is, can they prove it against Limerick? Now, I honestly think for Munster, I think Limerick and Waterford are way ahead of the rest. I think this third place team, it'll be between Clare and Cork for third place. I think Tipperary are a bit off, but they have some nice players. But I think Clare and Cork, it depends on Clare's injury list going into the championship. I think it'll be between Clare and Cork for third place, Aaron. I don't know what you think about that yourself.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Yeah, and it's a hard one, really, like to choose between Clare and Cork. I mean, you could argue either way. I'm actually not too. Who has home advantage for that game? Do you know?
It's a neutral venue, Semple
Oh,
Stadium.
Oh, is it? Is it? Yeah, that'd be interesting. All right, because you've seen last year as well. Obviously, when Tony Kelly had that chance right at the end of the game, and it was obviously saved by Patrick Collins. But yeah, like you were saying with Patrick Horgan, I mean, it is interesting. All right, I don't think you'd hear too many Cork fans who will definitely say that he should be dropped from the team. But like, do you have anyone else there maybe that could take up the freeze though? Obviously, the 65s and all the rest. I mean, is there other players there? I mean, I know he's missed a couple this year, and he's obviously been talking a lot about the colour of the slitter and everything else. But I mean, what do you reckon? Would there be someone else there that could fill that sort of void? Because I do think he kind of has that leadership role in the team as well that maybe other, I suppose that other players maybe wouldn't have.
Well, to answer to your questions, Aaron, when you look at the frees, we have Shane Kingston, we have Shane Barrett, and we have Conor Lehan, who can easily take frees as well. As good as Patrick Horgan at this stage of his career. And as for experience, I'd name Seamus Hardney is better than them at the moment. I'd put Seamus Hardney above Patrick Horgan. He has experience in this team. Darragh Fitzgibbon's been around the block for a few years as well. There are experienced players around. Conor Lehan, of course, has just come back in. He's near 30 now, so he's an experienced player. And when you look at his scoring ratio for play, he's better than Patrick Horgan. So to answer all your questions, to round the point even more, there's other players that can step up if Patrick Horgan is out of this team. That's just my opinion. I just think Cork fans are just thinking, oh, he's the best player in the country. I don't think he's even the best player in Cork at this particular moment in time. He would have been over the last few years, definitely. And he was for Glen Rovers at the club championship. But I just don't think he is at the moment. So I just think he's lacked a bit of pace. He lacks a small bit of nous as well. Look at the modernisation of the game as well. Like Shane Barrett is better player at the moment. Alan Connolly is more of a goal threat than Patrick Horgan, and that's why I'd have him over him in the team. Shane Barrett has more speed. Connolly has more goals. Kingston is the better player all around. Conor Lehan is a better player all around. Hardney, I think, is more of a leader than Patrick Horgan. And Robbie O'Flynn, I think, is one of the most underrated players in the country. So, and we have scores as well for midfield. Darragh Fitzgibbon, Kieran Joyce, if he's put in his proper position midfield where he's excelled, he could score as well. I'd say even put Robert Downey back to the full back line, not necessarily full back, but in cornerback. He's a bit too slow, in my opinion, for wing back. Maybe we need to put someone like, I'd say, Mark Coleman, Tim O'Mahony, and someone else there in the half back line. But yeah, just a few tweaks to the team Keir needs to make before championship, and we'll be right as rain. But if we don't make these changes now, I think we could even struggle in this Munster Championship, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough, all right. And obviously, the first game for Cork is going to be massive against the All Ireland champions. That's going to be a huge, huge game for Cork. But looking at Waterford, I mean, obviously a very, very comprehensive performance from them. 22 goals now in 7 games, I believe it is this year. I mean, extraordinary, really. I mean, they're averaging what 3-4 goals a game. I mean, they're just playing some of the best hurling really we've seen from any Waterford team. And they're going into that All Ireland series with a real chance. They're continuously bringing through new players. They've obviously got Pairc who's come back into the fold as well. What do you reckon? Could this be Waterford's year? I mean, obviously with Limerick, they're going to be favourites. And I know they had a poor enough league campaign, but it was the same last year as well. And I seen a tweet, interesting enough, earlier today from Buff Egan, who reckons that Waterford, Cork and Clare are going to be the 3 teams that are going to come out of the Munster Championship. I mean, what would be your thoughts on that? Are Limerick maybe in trouble? Could Waterford be the ones to maybe take their crown this year?
You know what? In regards to Buff Egan, I've been behind him for so many of his opinions over the last few weeks. Like Joe Fortune was the Westmeath manager was actually complaining about him in the stands over the past few weeks as well. There was against Joe Fortune for Buff Egan there because he does so much for little games. But according to this opinion, like it's ludicrous. Limerick, like they weren't at their best in the league. They weren't at their best last year. They have an abundance of talent. And John Kiley was in the crowd on Saturday night. He'll be taking notes. And Paul Kinnock was beside him as well. So they will be taking notes and what to expect from these Cork and Waterford teams. I think Limerick, like a lot of people are saying, oh, Limerick will miss out on Munster, including Buff Egan. I think, oh my God, it's absolutely ludicrous. Are we just not forgetting they won the All Ireland 3 times out of the last 4 years? They're considered as one of the best teams in hurling history since Kilkenny in that 2000s reign. Like, they're a very, very good side. I think it's a disrespect to Limerick at this stage. Maybe it's holding on to hope that Limerick could fall this year, a bit like Dublin in the football over the past few years. Like, I mean, it's ludicrous the way he said it. I think Limerick will top it or even for the second in this group with Waterford in the top 2. They're by far, I think, the best 2 teams in the country at this particular moment in time. And when you see Cork and Clare, like, I think it's going to be between them for 3rd place, but according to that opinion, that is absolutely ludicrous. Maybe he's just begging for a few likes. I don't know what it is about this opinion, but or maybe he just hates Limerick with a passion. I've seen so many people say he hates them. So, look, whatever it is, it's a ludicrous opinion. Limerick are going to shock everybody. I wouldn't be surprised if Limerick trounced Cork and Páirc Uí Chaoimh in the next few weeks. Like, not necessarily Cork are a bad team, but Limerick are a superb team. And people are forgetting that because of their league form. I think it's disrespectful to this Limerick team who have been brilliant over the last few years.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there as well. I don't know if he's putting that out there to try and wind Limerick fans up. Like, obviously he's a Kerry man, but I think a lot of people know he kind of is a second-hand Clare fan, like, let's be perfectly honest. So, I mean, I don't know if he's throwing that out there just to wind Limerick fans up. I'm not sure. But in terms of Waterford, I mean, as we were saying there, I mean, superb team, so much talent. I mean, how close could they get to Limerick, do you reckon?
Oh, it's going to be close. It's going to be very close, I think. Well, it depends on Limerick. Limerick doing well this year, in my opinion. The trouble with Waterford, they fall at the last hurdle over the last few years. But when you think about it, Galway were the much better team in 2017. Limerick were the much better team in 2020. Kilkenny were miles the better team in 2008. So the last few finals weren't really Waterford's fault. This year, they have an absolutely outstanding team. And once they get in Austin Gleeson, Jamie Barron back into the team, they look an unstoppable force. And when you look Pairc coming in, loads of the Bannyguller lads, Desi Hutchinson's, like, when you look at Desi Hutchinson, he didn't play well the other night and he still popped up with a goal. Patrick Curran is another young player coming up, Caherick Daly, Irla Daly, and of course, Tadhg de Búrca in the back as well. I think, like, he puts his body on the line. Like, there was an example of the first half of the other night. Like, there was, I think, 3 or 4 players around Alan Connolly when he was shooting the other night, and Tadhg de Búrca was fired up when he won the free out. Like, geez, he's an excellent player, and people seem to forget that because of the injury, the horrid injury he has in 2020. So, look, Waterford, they could get very close to Limerick. They have a very good team, and of course, the manager Liam Cahill, one outstanding manager, and look, Tipperary will be, cursing their luck that they didn't manage to get him over the winter. He made the right decision to stick to Waterford, and look, Waterford could win the All-Ireland this year. They have a very good team, very good manager, tactically astute manager. But at the moment, like, they have a very good team, they have a very good manager, and they have very good form. But I think maybe keep your heads on the ground a small bit, because Tipperary will be coming to Walsh Park, proving a point a small bit. Like, we were all saying Tipperary were very poor, but at the same time they have Mark Kehoe in the team, very good young player. Jake Morris and all them. Colin Bonner would love to stamp his authority in the Munster Championship, considering a load of people are just writing off Tipperary. And by the last few years, the lesson is, don't ever write off Tipperary, no matter how injury hit they are, and no matter how off form they are. They're still a serious prospect, and Waterford need to focus on that now before saying things about All-Irelands. But to answer your question about Limerick, they could get very, very close indeed. Now, I've said so over the last few years. Waterford are the second best team in the country, despite Cork or Kilkenny's form over the last few weeks.
Yeah, like I think when you see like the level of improvement with Waterford, like obviously you've seen a bit of improvement with Cork last year, but there does still seem to be an issue with the defence. And obviously, as you were saying there, like no Shane Kingston, no Jack O'Connor. Like, it's interesting that some of the changes obviously that Kieran Kingston is making into that Cork team. There was actually a tweet from Michael Verney there that he put up on Twitter there the other day. I was discussing it yesterday in the fan reaction show, which some of you lads can check out on YouTube if you haven't already. And he was saying here, all 4 Waterford goals hit into the ground before rattling the net. Definitely something that has been coached into them by Cahill and Beavens. So difficult for a keeper to save, and a lesson to all forwards. Top corner looks great, but don't give the goalie a chance. And it actually is a great point. And I even went back and watched some of Waterford's goals throughout the league, really. And there does seem to be quite an element to that. And even when you look at Waterford as well, like, they actually tend to shoot quite a lot on site from distance, even from 15 to 20 yards out. So you wonder, is that a tactic maybe that Waterford are going for, in terms of if they come up against a Limerick, like maybe they might be 20 yards out, 15 yards out, and they're saying, look, we have the players here that can shoot for goals. And that could be maybe something that Waterford are looking at to possibly catch Limerick out this year.
And judging by the stats and judging by that tweet, looking back at the game as well, it's definitely working for Waterford, this kind of tactic. And you've probably been taught that from a younger age. I know I've been certainly taught that from a younger age. At my club, we're not really a hurling. West Cork's not really a hurling stronghold. But anyway, we've been taught that from a young age. If you hit us down on the floor, it'll bounce over the goalkeeper, and it'll generate more speed on the slitter. Like, Waterford are doing that expertly at the moment. And if they keep doing that going into the championship, like for example, I think Cork maybe had 3 or 4 goal chances. We only took 1 at the end when it didn't matter. Waterford had 4 goal chances forward and back of the net. Like, that just shows you what. And you even look at their efficiency even for points as well. I think it was well over, I think I have to look back at it now, but I think it was over 80%, maybe over 70, but still over 70 in this magnitude of a game is absolutely outstanding. And I think Liam Cahan and Bevins are doing something right in the training ground. They must be, considering the amount of goals they're getting, averaging 3 or 4 a game. Like, that is impressive tally from them. And they're doing every single game. They scored 5 against Wexford. They scored 4 in this game. They scored 7 against Laois. They scored another few against Antrim. Like, Waterford are hitting goals left, right, and centre. And judging by the analysis there, great analysis there in that tweet, Waterford will be definitely a threat to Limerick if they get goals in their game. Like, even if the points are going against them, if they shoot well in a game, in a tight game, they'll most likely come out winning in that game. So all they need to do really is to battle well and give 100% in every game. I know it's easier said than done, obviously, but if they do that and they keep the conversion rate up, who knows, Waterford could see their first All-Ireland since 1957, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. All right, definitely to keep an eye on the round robin and all the big games. I think it's going to be very exciting indeed. Well, look, listen, I suppose we'll wrap this up here, Matthew. Very much appreciate you jumping on, and yeah, cheers to anyone who tuned into this stream as well. If you could smash the like button, comment down below your thoughts on all the weekend's games, all the big talking points that we discussed as well. And subscribe if you're new. Share it out to your friends and family. And yeah, cheers very much, Matthew, for coming on. Very much appreciated.
Thanks very much, Aaron, and thanks for having me.